going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Central Florida Sports Report. I'm your host, Ken Landis, and we're not going to talk about a whole lot today on May 11th, 2018, but we will get into the Dolphins and the Knights. I know it's been a while since the NFL draft, but we will go ahead and analyze the picks for the Dolphins as well as which UCF players were taken in the draft and where they ended up and how they'll impact their teams. And we'll also go ahead and get into the Marlins situation, which it's not looking good yet, folks, but there's still hope, still a lot of games left, over 100 games left in the season, so we'll see if the Marlins can turn it around, but let's go ahead and get into that agenda. So on today, May 11th, 2018, like I mentioned, we're only going to talk about two things. The first is the draft results from the NFL draft for the Miami Dolphins and the UCF Knights and what it means for the programs as well as the players coming out of it. And then we're going to talk about the chaos down in Miami with the Marlins as they're sitting not at a good spot as they're in the cellar of the NL East. Thankfully not the entire National League, but we'll get into some statistics on them as well as the rest of my predictions that I made from the beginning of the season and see how they're holding up to this date. So the draft fared pretty well for the Miami Dolphins as well as the national champion UCF Knights. That's right, I said it and will continue to say it with pride. So the Knights had 4 players selected in the draft and then another 3 or 4 signed as free agents after the draft, and most were pretty much right after the draft, maybe within a day or so. And one of the undrafted free agents for UCF got signed by the Miami Dolphins. We won't look at the Dolphins' unsigned free agents, but we can go ahead and take a look at the Knights and who was unsigned from there, as well as the draft selections that were picked in one of the 7 rounds. So here are the players that were taken from the UCF Knights, the national champion UCF Knights. As you see, Mike Hughes went in the first round. He's the first player to do that since Blake Bortles was drafted in the first round, and he's been excelling at the NFL level as he just recently made it to the AFC Championship game. And I like this pickup by the Vikings. He was supposed to go maybe as high as 17, one of the best cornerbacks in the draft, but Mike Hughes ended up falling all the way to the 30th pick, but he fell to a great team, and a team that's already in contention for another ring, or for a ring, as they almost made it. They got destroyed by Eagles in the NFC Championship game. So it'll be interesting to see how Mike Hughes does for them, whether he'll be playing defense or returning. As we all know, he's lethal on the return. Just ask the USF Bulls about that. Traquan Smith, a good fit for the Saints. It's going to be fun to see Drew Brees throwing him the ball. I wonder how long Drew Brees will be sticking around for Traquan Smith to catch these passes. Hopefully another couple of years, give Traquan Smith some leverage in the NFL. And then just a couple picks later was Jordan Akins. He's a good fit for a Texan team that is poised to win the AFC South this upcoming season with the return of their quarterback Deshaun Watson after that injury. And then the talk of the draft and of the NFL, Shaquem Griffin getting drafted to the same team as his brother. And this is going to be a fun story to watch throughout the entire NFL season coming up. And on the first day of practice, Pete Carroll actually had to tell Shaquem Griffin, hey, chill out, dude. It's just the first day of practice, first day of mini camps. You got to go a little easy. But he fell all the way to the 5th round. Some were hoping he'd go in the 3rd. I was thinking maybe the 4th. He fell to the 5th. But hey, he's still on an NFL roster, and I think he will make a lot of noise in this league. Then continuing, another tight end got signed by the Bengals. That's Jordan Franks, an undrafted free agent. It'll be interesting to see how much time that these guys get as an undrafted free agent. But Jamias Pittman going to the Miami Dolphins, that's exciting. That's exciting news. He was really good in the Peach Bowl as well as down the stretch for the Knights. And then last but not least, Aaron Evans going to the Philadelphia Eagles, the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. So that's a good spot for him to fit in and to learn and to maybe win another ring with them sometime soon. I don't see why they can't do it. So now we're going to go ahead and get into the NFL and the NFL team that we follow on this show and how they did in the draft and what it's going to say about the Dolphins. As you look down the position side, there's no quarterback. They did not draft a quarterback. They picked up a quarterback in the offseason That is Brock Osweiler, and I don't think he'll be starting. Ryan Tannehill is supposed to be starting as long as he doesn't get injured again. So it'll be interesting to see how that quarterback situation shakes out, but no drafted quarterbacks here. So that'll tell you a lot about what the Dolphins think of Ryan Tannehill and Osweiler. But there you go, Minkah Fitzpatrick, a safety. Rashad Jones is already back there. But if you can throw Minkah Fitzpatrick in there as well, that could create a dynamic duo back there. A lot of people saying this was a steal. I'm kind of convinced that is the same. I have the same viewpoint on that, let's say. A lot of people said it was a good pick for their spot. But if the Dolphins really wanted a quarterback, they would have had to trade up like Indianapolis and Arizona did. So kind of interesting. Or Indianapolis traded down for the Jets, so the Jets traded up into that. And then, as you see, 2 tight ends, which is something the Dolphins needed, and also a running back, Kalen Ballage. There was a lot of good things, a lot of good tape on this guy. So it'll be a very interesting season for the Dolphins. I'm not sure of our win total yet. That'll be in later videos as the season gets closer. So we've still got about 2 or 3, actually probably 3 or 4 months till those predictions of mine come out. But there you go. Those are the Dolphins that were selected. 7 new Dolphins. And if you count the UCF signing, that's 8 new Dolphins, but they had a laundry list of undrafted free agents that they signed as well. So it will be interesting. They also drafted 2 linebackers and another defensive back. So it'll be interesting to see if these guys can make their mark on this team. So it'll be interesting to see which rookies have the biggest impact on Miami and which UCF rookie will stand out the most. My guess is that Shaquem Griffin will get a lot of media coverage, as well as Mike Hughes probably will get a lot of reps. I've already seen a lot of things from the Vikings Twitter pages about him. So exciting stuff ahead, and I'm looking forward to the football season that is coming up. Even though the Dolphins might not be the best team out there, but it's still always a good time to see the Dolphins play, as well as other teams in fantasy football as well. But while we're talking about football, there's baseball going on, so we're going to go ahead and talk some baseball, and some not-so-good baseball being played by the Miami Marlins. They're sitting at 13-24 at the bottom of the NL East, and I've got a couple takeaways from this season so far, and I want to analyze a couple stats and some numbers and share them with you guys and talk about what the team needs to do to improve and climb their way back to 500 as they're well beneath it. So here are my 3 takeaways so far from the season. As you see, the Marlins are 13-24, 9.5 games out of the East, and 8.5 out of the wild card, although it's way too early to be worrying about the wild card. But here are the 3 things that I think are most relevant to this point. The Marlins, not to talk about strength of schedule, as UCF had a lot of crap thrown their way about that, but the strength of schedule of the Marlins has actually been the 4th toughest in the MLB, and that number 527 is, I believe, the combined winning percentages of the teams they've played. And as you see, the Braves have the toughest schedule, but they are in first place in the NL East. And the Cubs not doing too hot, and the Yankees are tied for the best record in baseball so far, but still some tough scheduled games to start the season for the Marlins. There was a stat they had on opening day where they predicted that the first couple months it would be rough, and then after May was over, they'd have the easiest schedule or something along those lines. So it'll be interesting to see if this Marlins team is really just bad or if they're playing really tough competition. So I'm excited to see the answer to that, and let's hope it is the answer that they're just playing some tough competition and will get better as the season goes on. The second point I have is they're not hitting the ball as well as they should. They are last in a ton of categories. I will get to a slide about that after I finish the third point. But their pitching is very consistent at being streaky. So it just seems to be when there's a good start from a Marlins starter, whether that's Peters or Harlan Garcia. Those have been our 2 best pitchers to this point, in my opinion. When they have a good start, it's either wasted, and then when they have a bet because they don't have run support, or when they're not on, we get a ton of runs, and it just, the timing is off for this team, as well as their bullpen. Their bullpen is just never, you can never predict what's coming out of that gate. and that's not good. And I was thinking, going into the season, the Marlins needed to address pitching the most out of any category possible, and they did the least amount to address that. So interesting to see how this is going to work going forward. But I think the Marlins have a little bit of hope going forward, so no reason to tune them out just yet. So here's what I was talking about with the second point. They're not hitting the ball well at all. And as you know, there are 30 teams in the MLB, and they are dead last in almost every single category in the MLB. So as you see, I just put at-bats in here so you know that I'm not skewing these numbers and showing only the bad stats. They are around the league average, just one at-bat over, actually, of the MLB average in at-bats at 19. So this just goes to prove they've had the same amount of at-bats as everybody, and yet continue to struggle. Look at this. Look at the batting average, 223. That's 17 points under the NL average, and then add another 0.005 to that. They're really not hitting up to par here. And then as you can look up and down the board here. They are subpar in absolutely every single category. Even stolen bases, it has nothing to do with hitting the ball. They only have 8. I think they're 8 for 15 on the season in stolen bases. And even if they had converted all their chances, they still wouldn't be up to the MLB average. So just nothing on the offensive side of the ball is going right. The ball's not bouncing the right way, whatever you want to say. But they don't even get on base 3 out of 10 times. You can't be a winning ball club and get on base only 2.9% of the time, or 29% of the time, or getting on base 2.9 times out of 10. It sounds a lot better to say 3, but either way, there are guys on teams that have a higher batting average than 294, and normally on base percentage is supposed to be higher with all the walks and all that stuff. So just not a good season so far for the Marlins, but there is time to turn around and make it better. So on to the more positive teams, I guess, or the better teams, if you will say. These were my predictions at the start of the season. I wanted to check up and see how they're going. And as you see, they're going okay. Even though the Cubs are in 4th place, they're only a game and a half out. That NL Central is being very competitive. And as you see, the Brewers, the wildcard team that I picked, have the 2nd wildcard spot, and they're above the Cubs. So that makes for an interesting time. LA is struggling at the hands of the Diamondbacks, who are the biggest surprise. But there you go, my surprise team is surprising a lot of people, especially, well, not me, because I picked them as my surprise team. But as I told you in that last episode when I predicted these predictions, Ronald Acuna has already made a name for himself, as well as Ozzy Albies. They're 2 young sluggers, and they're going to be on that team for a long time. They're 1st place in the East. And then we're going to move into the AL, where I've almost been spot on with my predictions. Yankees and Red Sox tied for 1st, both doing exceptionally well, but I think anyone could have picked those. And the Indians are at 500 baseball, but somehow find themselves sitting atop that division. That's a very shaky division this year. And the Astros are giving it their all as well, again, trying to protect their championship. But the Angels are tied with them currently, as the Astros weren't in action yesterday, and the Angels were and won their game. And then the surprise team, the Mariners are the 1st team out of the wild card so far, so 1.5 games behind that 2nd wild card spot. So an interesting first month and a half of the MLB season. Looking forward to more of it, and as the season goes on, we'll have more analysis, numbers, and hopefully some more wins under the Marlins belt. The MLB season has given us a lot to be excited about so far. A renewed Yankees-Red Sox rivalry. The Marlins not so much, but I'm looking forward to that 25th anniversary weekend and see what the crowds and fan reaction is like with the teal throwbacks. I'm excited, and you should be too. So, but that's going to do it for the episode today. If you want to see something in the future, if you want me to analyze something or talk about something on this show, let me know in the comment section. And while you're there, might as well hit the like button. And then while you're there, you might as well hit the subscribe button. So you can get the latest updates on whatever episode I come out with. It would be great to have you subscribe to me and hear more about some South Florida sports and some Central Florida sports. So I don't know when the next episode is coming out, but it will most likely be analyzing my NBA predictions and NHL predictions, which I can already tell you are a little bit off. but exciting nonetheless. So keep looking out for those. But that will do it for this show, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate y'all, and catch y'all on the flip side. Take care.